So yesterday I did a video about why China's military, specifically China's Air Force, is overhyped. And someone in the comments section asked me, well, Ted, what about China's hypersonic missile? What about China's hypersonic missile? So I spent some hours today looking into this. And what I found out was that this missile can travel 5 times faster than the speed of sound, or roughly at around 4,000 miles per hour. Sounds scary. But you know what sounds scarier is America's intercontinental ballistic missile, which can travel at around 15,000 miles per hour. I'm going to assume that the reason why this commenter asked me about this is because there has been a lot of talk in the media about China's hypersonic missile. The reason for this is an article that was published by the Financial Times. And this article claims that American intelligence watched in horror as China launched a rocket into low orbit carrying a hypersonic missile, and it traveled around the globe only to miss its target by around 24 miles. And this article claims that American intelligence watched as this happened in horror, utterly taken by surprise by China's technological efficiency. The American intelligence agents were just horrified by this. This is what this Financial Times article claims. And the sources that the article uses are all anonymous. They're unknown. And China just denied that it happened. China says, no, that's not what actually happened. What happened was really a routine flight test of a reusable space vehicle. So it's China's word against the Financial Times. In other words, this is a nothing story. It's a nothing burger. And were American intelligence agents shocked by this? The New York Times published an article recently stating probably not. It's highly unlikely that American intelligence was shocked by this. Why? Because China already has a sophisticated space program, and for China to do something like this is not at all shocking. There's a quote that I want to read to you guys. It's from Jonathan McDowell, a Harvard astronomer who tracks global space launches. And he told the New York Times, quote, "There's nothing we know from reliable sources. Every aspect of this story has question marks." Every aspect of the story has question marks. Why? Well, for one, the article from the Financial Times has all anonymous sources. We have no idea who these people are. And what I really think this is propaganda used to scare Americans. America wants its citizens to be scared of China. One thing I have noticed about the United States is that at times America will hype up its enemy. And even though it's utter bullcrap, it does this anyway to scare Americans so that Americans can all huddle together under American policy and support it. The United States did this with Saddam Hussein. We hyped up Saddam Hussein. We talked about how he had this huge army. He had the biggest military in the world. And the reality was that Saddam's military was literally one of the worst militaries on earth. One of the worst militaries in human history was the military of Saddam Hussein. And that is not an exaggeration. Um, it was ridiculous how quickly it took the Americans to crush Saddam Hussein. America had more difficulty fighting the insurgents. The insurgents actually were a lot scarier than Saddam Hussein's military. I mean, you have to go into a room and clear a room out. You have to break the door open. You don't know who's inside the room. They could have a knife. They could stab you in the head. And yes, I actually heard about a story in which an American soldier was stabbed in the skull in the process of trying to clear a room of terrorists. He walked right into the room, and there was a guy waiting for him by the door. Bam, stuck a knife into his skull. He survived, but still, it's scary. I mean, it's even though these people aren't trained, it's still terrifying. But America hyped up Saddam Hussein. Why? Because we wanted to justify a war. Look how scary this guy is. He's so scary. Our troops are so brave to fight this guy's army. The reality was that this was one of the worst militaries in human history. And the real enemy, the real threat to America has nothing but great things to talk about. America has nothing but great things to say when it comes to countries that are actually a threat. We can see this sort of thing going back into early American history. I mean, you go back to the first half of the 20th century. Russia had a war with Japan, and America was rooting for the Japanese. And the Americans watched as the Russians were slaughtered, and they cheered it. They cheered it on. America watched as Japan defeated the Chinese in the first Sino-Japanese War, and America cheered it on. But little did America know that one day the Americans would have to fight the Japanese, and they were worlds apart when it came to military strength. The Japanese and the Chinese, that is. Absolutely worlds apart when it came to military strength. And America hated Russia in the past. And after World War I, America was very friendly with the Germans. We made many deals with them. We made a lot of money with the Germans. We thought we could support the Germans. Hell, there were even Americans who supported Adolf Hitler. They were Americans who supported Adolf Hitler. And we hated the Russians. In the end, the Americans had to fight the Germans and had to ally with the Russians against the Germans. So what's happening right now? America is exaggerating China's military strength to scare Americans so that Americans can support Japanese fascism. Because that's what's happening in Japan right now. Look at all of these politicians in Japan. Many of them deny that Nanking took place. Many of them deny that there were comfort women or sex slaves who were brutalized by the Japanese Imperial Army. And if you look at many of the major Japanese politicians, including the new prime minister, they are members of a Japanese political cult called Nippon Kaigai, which literally wants to revive emperor worship in Japan. And it's the same thing with Turkey. America will create propaganda against Russia so that we can support Turkish fascism. Russia is the big bad guy. Support Turkey. When the reality is that Turkey is filled with racism, ultra-nationalism, and fanatic Islamism. And Turkey wants to revive its empire. But don't worry about that. Just worry about Russia. So we overhype China to scare Americans into supporting Japanese fascism, and we overhype Russia so that we can get Americans to support Turkish fascism. That's what's happening. So that we can justify American support for the Turks and the Japanese, both of whom have a history of genocide, both of whom actually deny the genocides that they committed in the past, and both of whom want to revive their old powers. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.